All right, so this is the Operator Framework Working Group. Today is March 12th, and we've got a few items on the agenda. So let's jump right in. So last week, we talked about, Bryce asked whether we could essentially put up this doc that we've been working on inside Red Hat about OLM v1. And I went through things this morning and have a PR up there. So for anyone that does not work at Red Hat and does not have access to that internal doc, this is almost a one-for-one, so you're not really missing much. There was a few specifics about Red Hat product stuff that used to be in here that I didn't want to put in our upstream, but by and large, I'd say like 95% of this document is exactly the same. So this is sort of a culmination of what we've been thinking about for the last year-ish in terms of what will make OLM v1 look like. So definitely interested in getting some comments there. We've already obviously gotten a bunch of comments within Red Hat, but obviously we really want the community to be involved in this too. So that's up. So anybody who feels like they want to see what's going on there, definitely take a look and provide any feedback, positive or negative, right? It'd be really good to get some positive feedback if you have it. So, but if you have negative feedback, that's fine too. Any questions or comments there? Obviously, that's just a link to a pull request, so it's not super exciting until you've had a chance to read it, but definitely want to stop and see if anybody already has anything. All right, sounds like
I
no.
haven't reviewed this, sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't reviewed this, but this is great that you put this update of the OLM1 overview. I definitely will review it and get back to you if I have any comment. So the best way to put comment is in the sudo gig issue.
Yeah, I think just comment directly in that pull request. And if we need to like have a longer, different discussion that doesn't work so well, then we can take it out and put it in Slack, or I would say start in Slack if you want to start some like long thread about something that's in there.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, Michael, looks like you've got the next item here.
Yeah, I'm working on at least getting the kind of installing operators in OLM v1 and some of the catalog work we did downstream. I want to kind of port that to the upstream, but I'm not totally like abreast on all of the changes that have happened and some of the differences. So it doesn't seem, I don't know if a typical pull request for getting docs review is the best approach. If everybody thinks, if the community thinks that a pull request would be fine, I'm happy to do that. But I just didn't know what the best way was to get review when we're dealing with, on the one hand, technical changes that are ahead of the most recent downstream release, but also making sure that only the relevant bits are in there, and I don't have the best view on that. So I didn't know if like a Google Doc to start or HackMD would be a better way to get that sort of first round of review to kind of shape things before it goes into a pull request. Or if it doesn't matter and just pick one and we'll see what happens.
Anybody have any opinions on that? Yeah, Varsha.
Thanks, Michael, for working on this. I'm just curious, what amount of changes do you think are required? And the diff which is present from the downstream and the upstream.
I know for sure, I think there's going to be issues with the renaming of the operator API to extension or cluster extension. I'm not sure where we're at, and also so that I know that's one thing that's different. And then I know that there's some issues with pull secrets and some other workarounds that we did that are not going to be totally accurate. But yeah, I did. Yeah, so there are issues there. That those are some of the things that I know about for sure. But there's also a bunch that I don't know about. So would it make sense for me just to put up a pull request? And if it's really gnarly, we can port it over to something like if it just gets too difficult, then we'll pivot. Would that make sense?
Yeah, I'm fine with anything, like anything that works best for the team. I was just curious about the timeline, but yeah, anything that's easier. No preference and no particular preference with respect to this.
The one thing that I'm thinking about, Michael, is like there's a lot of docs that are downstream, which are all, I mean, we've already sort of looked at them, at least inside Red Hat. And so I'm thinking like on one hand, it's like, well, if we want this in time for KubeCon, and we've already, at least the Red Hatters have essentially vetted them already, like could we just do a mass PR and get it all in one go? On the other, like the bigger the PRs get, like the more chance there is for going down a bunch of different rabbit holes all at the same time. And also like there's like this review fatigue that happens where it's like, whatever, like this is, a lot of things to read. So sure, approve.
Right.
So it's like, I would say like if we didn't have this KubeCon aspect to it, my advice would be, try to split it up into like individual sections or documents or something that's small and consumable, and we can just start churning through it. If it's a paragraph at a time or something, then it's like that's super quick generally.
Yeah.
And then only the things that are controversial are the things that get held up and we can keep moving on other things. So I don't know like how easy that would be to do and whether like that would take too much time between now and next week. So I don't know. Yeah.
I think I have an idea. So what I want to focus on is before we get into too many concepts or things like that, I'm not really going to go into the APIs a whole bunch. I'm going to focus on just basically the catalog content, the catalog D content, and installing operators and working there because it's something that is hands-on and anyone can kind of get, it's a good place to sort of jump in and see and talk about like the version range stuff because that's really cool. So that's what I'm going to focus on. But why don't I take the markdown and I'll put it, that's still a big chunk of docs. So why don't I put that in a HackMD, and then as sections are ready, I will just start porting those into smaller pull requests, and I'll just sort of mark off that like, okay, this is done. And we will have a little bit of the big doc to start, but we can sort of prioritize from there. We can it's a way to look at what we have and then maybe see what's most important. And then I can go from there. So that if only, installing an operator, doing version ranges, or installing an operator, or creating a catalog, installing an operator, and say like working with version ranges and deleting an operator. Like that's sort of my goal. So it's not get everything, but just like this is what we've done. It's the goal. So
that sounds good. And by the way, this is somewhat relevant, but there is a PR that I have up for showing the name and the version of the thing that got resolved or installed. I know we were talking a little bit about that last time.
Yep.
So hopefully we can get that merged and we can account for that in the docs and remove some of the extra back and forth that you have to do with the catalog to figure out what's what.
Yep. I saw that and I'll keep an eye on that. So okay, cool. Yeah, and the goal is like this doesn't have to be perfect, but it just seems sometimes with docs you need to have enough stuff there to maintain to get over that sort of friction of getting started. So the goal is really just let's get something to show for the work that the community has done, for KubeCon, and also to kind of start on that iteration process as we go. So
Awesome, thanks. And yeah, Andy, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just curious, for the KubeCon we're talking about later this year, the Cube conference in US. Is that the one that we are trying to prepare for? The Cube conference that Michael, you're talking about here. It sounds like
I think it's the European one, which is, what is it, the 19th, March 19th?
oh,
And I
okay,
think
in
it's
Europe.
so yeah, so yeah, so it'll be a little bit of a time crunch, so we're not sure if we'll get it all done, but anyhow, it'd be nice to have something to show. And so we'll see how far we can get.
Definitely. So, so if my suggestion is if there are a lot of things to go through, maybe just focus on the one that we want to target to show for the QCon. What format is that? Is like going to be a demo presentation or a mix of both?
For my contribution, this was just going to be to have something on the operator controller doc site to point people to. It's so I'm not participating in KubeCon directly, and I won't be there. But this was just so I'm not sure who's going to be going, but just so that there's some updated doc, so that if we spark some curiosity, that that folks could kind of play around and sort of see, engage with the work that the community has done.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I play with the coast to coast demo that was documented in the GitHub repo, and I think that procedure is a good example. If somebody want to get hands-on, play with the latest, maybe there's something like that can be documented and included. We are moving from operator to extension, so I'm not sure which one would be more relevant. Maybe the extension, if we have a lot of things that we can demo there, but I know that you're also working on the implementation. So like this, the version range that maybe not be able to cover all in this demo. So maybe showing the operator coast to coast demo is still a good one.
Yeah, I would
Just
suggest sticking with, so we renamed operator to cluster extension back in like December. I would recommend sticking with that for now. The namespace scoped extension is still under active development, and unless Varsha recommends otherwise, I would stick to cluster extension just because there's not a whole lot there yet for the extension API.
Yeah, so the cluster extension is the rename from operator, right? So whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Varsha, did you have?
Yeah, agree with you, Joe. We need not go into the extension part of it in general, but to just give an overview of the format, we have an operator framework booth for 3 days at KubeCon, where folks can just come and ask questions. So having a demo and some kind of docs for them to point to would be really helpful. And we also have a maintainer track presentation. So again, having docs linked to it would be helpful if folks come to the talk. They like the product and they would like to try it out and get a hands-on experience. So yeah, I think that was the overview about the format. And yeah, I agree. It's better to have a coast-to-coast demo and just the cluster scoped cluster extension should be fine for now, instead of getting into the namespace scope side of things.
Yeah, my thought was that I think the coast to coast demo seems pretty good, and like you said, it's a really good starting point. But what we don't have documented is like how to sort of use the community operators catalog and installing, like getting that on your cluster, which is kind of the catalog D side of things. So I would like to clean up, if there's enough time, I'd like to kind of work on polishing the coast to coast demo, but I wanted to sort of cover that sort of catalog D gap. The intention was to cover the kind of more basic, grab an operator from your catalog or grab an extension from the community operators catalog and work from there to cover that use case. And that the docs for that are already written downstream, so hopefully it shouldn't be too much of a lift. Hopefully we'll see.
So,
Write something.
Yeah, so the one thing I'll note about the coast to coast doc that's in place right now is I originally wrote that as a coast to coast to highlight the work that we did basically in Q4 of 2023 and all the new features. So it was written in a way that's specifically meant to showcase that. So I think it probably makes sense that if we want like a more generic, like end user tutorial docs experience, that we write another doc that's maybe more like a quick start kind of thing, or like something along those lines that's more targeted for what you're talking about, Michael, rather than updating that existing one, because I think it makes sense to try to keep a historical record of like, this is what the end-to-end experience looked like as we added features.
There is a section downstream with like working with plain bundles, which I think which was based off of the coast to coast, and it also has received updates recently in the most recent release. So that was going to be kind of the next procedure to upstream, and that has that downstream procedure like has zoomed out a little bit, so it is a little bit more generic and not just about the dem. So that would be the kind of the next thing to work on. But if we think that doing plain bundle work is the better introductory tutorial, I can start working on that first. It doesn't
Well, I do think I'd like to see like a quick start documentation for just like, okay, OLM v1 looks really cool. How do I install it? How do I get the community operators up in place? And how do I install one of those operators? And then that'd be like the first set. I don't remember if we have all that already in place. It's been a little while since I've looked at the documentation site, but so if that already exists, cool. If not, I think that would be like a great starting point.
Yeah, I think that has some bit rot, that point. But that was my thought too, is that getting the community catalog installed or like, up and running and just installing something is sort of the quickest startup and interaction point. So that's why I was going to focus there first. So, but yeah, this has given me a lot to think about in terms of shaping this, and it'll also help me kind of keep things in scope so we can, actually make the 1 week deadline. So I'll create an issue and I'll post it in the Slack channel, and I'll consolidate some of what we've discussed and document how I'll approach the next steps.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. That sounds great. Thanks for working on this. All right, that's the end of our agenda. We don't have any. Oh, one other thing, Bryce, did you have any update about the where'd it go? About the project views or anything that you want to talk about? If not, that's totally fine. I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, if you're able to pull up that project view, that'd be cool. I didn't have a chance to write anything onto the agenda this morning, but it's there's a new basic project view in place for like a high level look at the epics, and basically each of these epics maps is, should map to like a feature or a feature set that we're going to be adding. The idea is that this gives like a nice high level overview in a Kanban style of like what epics have kind of been proposed, which ones have kind of been accepted into, and like have like a needs some design work done, which ones have been accepted and gone through the design process, which ones we're currently working on, and which ones we've completed. There's probably still a little bit more work to do to this view. So like if folks start using it and notice like, hey, it'd be nice if we had this view or like this thing, definitely feel free to ping me on Slack, and we can make some changes as necessary. But I think this is a good start for like a high level view into like what we're working on and what the current state of that work is.
Yeah, this is awesome, Bryce. One thing that I was helping Bryce with when he was putting this together last week, I added some GitHub workflows that automatically add issues that have the Epic label on them to this project view. So for those not familiar, this project view is for all of Operator Framework, and the way that GitHub works essentially is that not every issue automatically shows up here for Operator Framework repos. So I went into the primary OLM v1 repos, which if I remember correctly were RuckPack, Operator Controller, Catalog D, and kubectl operator, and added a workflow that would look for issues that have this Epic label and automatically add them. So one thing that if you're working on epics and you're creating new issues under them, those don't automatically get added. We could talk about whether we want to go and do those too. So for now, like this will only automatically add epics. If you do need to go and actually like add an individual issue, I can show you what that looks like here. Let's see if we've got, go look at. Somewhere we've got, thought we had something here. There we go. Yeah, so like in this view, if the issue is not already in the project, you won't see this little box here. But you can click on this and click OLM v1 if you have right access to the repo. And if you don't, then let us know if you create an issue and you think it should be part of the project, then we can go and do that. So just mention it on Slack or something. But I would recommend doing that. Like if you create an issue and then create a bunch of sub issues, like go and add those sub issues to the project too, so that they can show up under there. Bryce, did you raise your hand?
Yeah. So I have two things. One's a question that I'll put second for you, Joe. The first one is, I think in terms of like individual issues in an epic, I wonder if it makes sense for the folks working on the epic. I don't know who has permissions to mess with these projects, like these project boards. But I wonder if it makes sense to like create maybe a temporary board for each epic that allows you to like drill down further into see like the progress of an individual epic, rather than kind of populating this board with a whole bunch of those issues. To try to keep like this a high level view, and then if you want to drill down into the specifics of a particular epic, you can.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We have this view that's organized by iteration as well, which let's see, I think there's another way. You can group by a bunch of different stuff, but I'm not sure exactly. You can group by repository, but yeah, you can't group by like parent issue, it doesn't look like.
Yeah, I wonder if there's because like when you create an issue in GitHub that has like all the different checkboxes and you turn those into issues, they become like tasks. I don't know if there's a way to like categorize that in a GitHub project. But I can look into it to try to see if there's some options that we can play around with for that. So I'll look into some of that. The question I had for you, Joe, is for the automation. Is there a way for it to automatically assign the state based on a label in a project, like the status? Because I
You mean
wonder if
something
it
other
makes
than no status?
yeah. So like I wonder if it makes sense for us to like if that automation will automatically pick up changes to like the labels. Maybe it's helpful for instead of like having to come to this project and like move things around or like go to that issue and update the status itself. Like we could just throw labels on them. But I don't know.
I know that
Yeah,
you
maybe
can
that's more
change the status here, right? Like that is something you can do.
yeah.
So I don't think that's a whole
Maybe
lot
that's
different than labels.
yeah.
Um,
I just don't know. I just don't know if you can filter in the GitHub issue view by project status.
you
But
mean
so the
like,
labels might help like when you're searching through the issues on a particular repo by the labels, but I don't know. Maybe that's more complex than we need.
that might be. Let's see. I mean, you can certainly filter by labels, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, and I don't think there's a way to filter by project stuff, but in my mind, like if you want to look at project stuff, then just go to the project view.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of, so looking at the workflow setup, I do feel like I remember something about. I think there might be another field on here. Let's see if I look for this. There might be another field on here for like which status do you want it to be, but I don't know if you can like change it per. Maybe not. Yeah, I don't see anything about setting the status, doesn't look like. But yeah, I don't think it's, I mean, I don't know what you think, Bryce, but in my mind, like getting it into the project view is always sort of the thing that's like a little bit annoying because unless you knew about how GitHub doesn't do that, you like show up in your project view and you want to do something with it and it's not there. So I think we're like trying to overcome that problem primarily.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm kind of also thinking out loud of like some of the um ways that we can make it a nice experience for somebody coming in and wanting to see that and for like see the state of things and all that information. But yeah, so some of the stuff that I'm thinking out loud could definitely be more complex than we need. But yeah, I think the best start is like getting this everything that we need into the actual project view.
Do you think it's reasonable to ask the feature architects for the main things that we're working on to set those views up for next week? Or I guess we could say for the week after. That's actually another discussion thing we should talk about.
Yeah, I think the folks that are working on the briefs should be responsible for creating those views, and if they don't have permission, going to people who have the permissions to at least create the view and help them get it set up in a state where they can make changes to it.
Nikolai, Varsha, how's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
I think what I'm doing is not upstream related, so
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
probably that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Okay, so pH dashboard. Um, anything else, Michael? Do you still have your hand up for something about this?
Yeah, maybe it's more of a separate discussion topic, but it reminds me that at some point we talked about maybe having a needs docs label. And like looking at that project view, I don't know how much we're using that, and it would I don't know, maybe that could be like another sort of easy first step to kind of trying to keep up and like what we were discussing last week.
Honestly,
and to
my
have
thought is look for the Epic label
okay,
and assume that all of those need docs.
okay,
And if you have a question about, well, how do I document this, then just bring it up.
yep, cool.
Does that work?
Yeah. To know where to look and to start the discussion like in the Epic, and I think all that's great. So
Okay,
excellent.
cool. And then I had a discussion topic that I was just reminded of since I was talking about action items, but next week, all the Red Hat maintainers are at a face-to-face meeting today, like 7 days from now. So this meeting will be busy. So I think we'll go ahead and just cancel for next week and we'll get back together 2 weeks from today. All right, any other discussion topics that anyone wants to bring up? All right, well, I guess that's it then. Thanks everybody for attending. See everybody in 2 weeks.
Thanks, Joe.